Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
What is happening, Pahrump? Matt Sadler here, and I'm back with the Nevada Patriot Podcast here on Pahrump's fabulous KPFF 97.7 FM and streaming worldwide on Rumble, YouTube, and Godfather.media. Thank you for willingly joining us, and even if you're unwilling, if you're a kid stuck in the back seat of your family car, give us a try. Give us a listen. Maybe you'll have something to talk about with your friends at school. Hey, listening to oldies, as I recall as a kid, in the back of the old station wagon, it's made me a fan of that music to this day. Changed my life. Thanks, Mom, Dad, Aunt Orma. Today, we're talking about a new constitutional conservative group forming locally. This group's aim is to be practical and not one where we just yell at the screen while Tucker, Hannity, or Charlie Kirk are giving us all this bad news. We want to go over real strategies, real tactics that are not abstract, but may just work in the real world. The first meeting of this group is going to be this coming Monday, March 27th at 6 p.m. at the Bell Bonds office on 160 in Basin. So you can go ahead and find details like the specific address, agenda, club bylaws, stuff like that at thenevadapatriot.com. That website, our main site, has all the links there, thenevadapatriot.com. Folks who value the Constitution are welcome regardless of party affiliation. And we also have a big Nye County Republican Central Committee meeting coming up April 15th. Eligible voting members of our local party, I urge you to attend. The party chairman will be voted on. Candidates are Eric Murphy and Leo Blundo. The vice chair seat will also be voted on. It's an important meeting. Again, that's April 15th. It's Saturday, on a Saturday at 10 a.m. Come kick off tax day by getting your vote on. I know I'll be there. Also, later in May, the Conservative Women's Tea is set for Sunday, May 7th at the Artesia Community Center. Tickets can be purchased online through Eventbrite with the link also on our page, thenevadapatriot.com. What show of mine would be complete without additional complaining about a proposed new Nevada law or two? So that'll be included today as well. So let's get to it, shall we? So we'll start with the meeting for Grassroots Conservatives of Nevada. So what is this group all about? GCON, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's forming now. The first main membership meeting is going to be, like we said, this Monday, the 27th at 6 p.m. So what are some of the goals of this group? What are we looking to do? So one of the main things why I kind of envision a group like this in our area is I've seen firsthand, secondhand, thirdhand, money's big role in our local elections and in local politics. So a group like this is not that we're opposed to candidates raising money or that's inherently evil, but the focus and the viability that seems to be only attained once you have a threshold of a certain amount of money. There's too much focus on that because I know firsthand there are mechanisms, there are strategies, there are things you can do to make yourself viable as a candidate. You don't need to go out there and raise tens of thousands of dollars from special interests on a job that may or may not even pay you $5,000 a year. You know, to me, on the face of that, when I see candidates doing that, it makes zero sense. I mean, I get it. U.S. senators, what is their salary? Hundreds of thousands of dollars with lifetime pensions after you're elected one time, stuff like that. I get it. That's why they're spending millions of dollars on those elections. Not to mention the influence they have if they ever leave office or they want to write a book or they want to go ahead and become a board member at some Fortune 500 company. It seems like that's the way to do it, right? So I get it there. But locally, whether you're talking county commission, state assembly, state senate, some of the other jobs, the local state jobs, the clerk's office, public administrator, jobs like that, I don't think money should play as big of a role as it does. And the thing is, too, once you can get a local candidate elected and their focus and their foundation is not on paying back favors to donors and whoever helps support them, they're free to have their own agenda as an open-minded, clear-thinking human being, hopefully a righteous candidate, a righteous public official that can go ahead and vote their conscience, that can govern in a way that is authentic and not by puppet strings. So that they can take the next step years down the line, maybe run for a bigger office. Now maybe instead of people throwing money at them because they want them to do a certain thing, maybe now people will support their campaigns, will donate big dollars because they already see that this person is a moral person making good decisions, sound, limited government decisions that are beneficial. And ideally, we want candidates that are actually doing a good job, that are being honest, that have integrity, that are constitutional. And that's a big thing about this group. So when we say grassroots conservatives of Nevada, I really mean constitutional conservative. I believe that the Constitution is inherently a limiting document. So it's limiting how much influence our government has over our lives and our freedoms. So there has to be a certain amount of restraint that the government puts out there so that we're not violating each other's rights. But ultimately, when some people talk about, socially conservative values and things like that, I am a social conservative. I also believe that the government does a very poor job of making some kind of great utopia, right? So I think when individuals are left as free as possible with the lightest touch of government around them, with the less strings, less regulations, and we're free to make our own choices, I think a lot of the same values that I value socially will come back into our society. Because let's face it, we're not the same country where we were 40 years ago when I was a little kid. We're not even the same country where we were 5 or 10 years ago, if I'm being completely honest. And I know a lot of you listeners see that. So obviously, this leads to one of our second part 1A and 1B. The 1B would be to identify, come alongside of, and support good candidates through this organization. Now, that's going to include action items that we're going to have at the meetings to give people practical, strategic, and tactical things that they can do, sometimes even from the comfort of their own home, that they can do that will actually have an effect in our society. So we want to give people resources, ideas, methods, because believe it or not, in the campaign trail, we try lots of different tactics, techniques. Some of them cost money, some of them don't. Some of them are good tactics, good strategies that work, but there's a lot of things that, for lack of a better term, were time wasters, money wasters. So I want to kind of encourage people that have kind of lived a lot of this stuff out so I can kind of speak to a level of authority on the topic of strategies, tactics on how to be successful as a candidate. Although the governing documents, the bylaws of this organization, doesn't mandate membership dues. We don't even take membership dues. That will never be a part of this program. It doesn't mandate that you are a member of the Republican Party, although I'm sure there's going to be lots of Republicans at the meetings. Basically, we're looking for people, third party, no party, independent, IAP, libertarian, whoever, who value, even Democrats. Maybe there's some of you Democrats out there that maybe if you read your party's platform, you'd realize, wow, I don't believe in any of this. I should probably not be a member of this party. Come on down to the meeting yourselves. Knowledge is power. However, we have to live in the real world, so we understand that in our county, viable candidates tend to have, they must run as Republicans for all intents and purposes. So we are obviously, as a group, encouraging any candidates to come along that want to seek an endorsement from our group, help from our group, that they would run as Republicans. Because we know in our county, a lot of times, the decision is often made, especially in partisan elections, the victor is kind of known if they win the primary. And even in nonpartisan elections, a lot of times if you have a commanding lead in the primary and you're one of the top two to make it to the general, you have a very good chance of being elected. That's just the practical, pragmatic realm of Nye County and Pahrump politics here, and we all can see that. So when we say that knowledge is power, you have a meeting of 20, 30, 40, I don't know how big the group will ultimately get, but if you have 20, 30, or 40 people that are semi-coherent and on the same page, and they want to take action and they want to get involved and they can find ways to effectively get involved, the influence that 20, 30, or 40 people can have in the political realm is actually very immense. There's not a lot of highly engaged, politically active folks, in Nevada. In Nye County, we probably see proportionally more than most places. But since there's not an incredible amount proportional to the actual population, those folks that want to remain active and engaged, they have the ability to sway things, to make huge differences. And we just want to encourage people that want to get in the game and off the sidelines to do something actually productive and practical. That's just not a bunch of us gathering in meetings or in our homes with our spouses, getting upset at the red meat topics. Joe Biden bad, they're doing this, they're doing that, blah, blah, blah. Epstein Island, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. I get it. Irritates me too. There's a lot of corruption in our government. There's a lot of stuff to be angry about. But at the end of the day, that's not going to do any good. Grumbling amongst our peers, complaining about it during, after, and in between meetings, things like that. We got to put some real teeth to what we're doing. Otherwise, we're kind of spinning our wheels. So, again, there's not going to be membership dues to this group. We're not going to raise money on behalf of the organization. What I would encourage for folks to do is, by having the information, by seeing which candidates are authentic and are not, that they would be encouraged to individually give to individual candidates or causes or anything that they want to out of their own pocket. So we're not going to be a huge super PAC that goes ahead and collects a bunch of money and then just someone like me or people on a board can decide what they want to spend the money on. No, I don't believe that's going to be effective, and I believe that makes an organization ripe for mismanagement of funds and just possibly wasting funds. But when you're cutting that check out from yourself to a candidate or a cause, I think that's more important. I remember some of the donors during my campaign that really touched my heartstrings the most were a few people, and I knew that money wasn't coming easy for these folks, but they gave what they could because they believed in what we were doing. And I'm telling you, whether those donations were $25 or $50 or that meant a lot. So I take finances and fiscal responsibility serious. I don't waste my own money. I never wasted my family's money when I was a kid. I don't like anybody wasting their money. So I believe once we have the knowledge, once we have clarity on the political landscape, I think people will make good decisions on where they spend their money and who they support. And some of the stuff that they do for candidates, some of the biggest help I received during my campaign wasn't even in the form of money. It was a little bit of sweat equity. It was help logistics with the campaign. It was knocking on some doors. It was making some phone calls. It was things like of that nature that really, really can help. So let's keep that in mind. Now, I hope to any diehard Republican listeners, I want to drive this point home. I am not looking to siphon away membership or sway people away from the Republican Party, from the Nye County Central Committee, from the state party, from the national party. I believe that the Republican Party, the platform, and the Republican Party as it's existed through the decades, since the days of Lincoln, it is by far the best expression of my personal beliefs as expressed in a political party that I can imagine. So, believe me, the ideals of republicanism of the party I'm 100% for. I want to see our Nye County Republican Central Committee succeed. So before anybody sits there and says, well, are you just mad? You don't like the way that something's going on over here. You're just going to take your ball and go home or create your new game with some new friends or a new treehouse club or anything. No, I don't care. I have enough friends. I'm perfectly happy hanging out at home with my wife and kids, hanging out, doing stuff that way. I keep my circle small. I don't need affirmation from other people. I don't need to be told nice things about me. I don't need to always be at meetings where everyone thinks the same as me. I don't have to have people in places where they have to just adore me. I think this group fundamentally, I want it to be a place where conservatives, regardless of party, can have a seat at the table, that we can learn from one another, that sometimes ideas are going to clash, they're going to compete, they're going to be at odds with each other, the beliefs anyway. And I believe that when things are discussed, and if it's done in an environment where these ideas can actually flesh out and be dissected, argued for or argued against, then let the ideas stand on their own. Let the best idea prevail. But if we're constantly, not allowing certain discussion or different points of view or members of a certain body that may not agree wholeheartedly with certain other hardcore conservative views, I don't think that person should be felt like they need to be excluded from the group or shuttered or muted. I believe there's room at the table for everyone. I mean, think about your own household. Do you agree 100% with even one member in your household? You guys probably butt heads on a litany of different items. I know growing up, I have a great family. I had great roommates, but don't get it twisted. You're around each other enough, you want to throw each other out of a window. I know I did. So just being a little bit honest. So a little bit of division I've noticed. And I'm not saying I've been out here for decades as part of the local Republican Central Committee, because I haven't. So a bit of division I've noticed in my relatively short term being active in the party Central Committee. I've seen it. I'm not sitting here pointing blame at any one person or any of the leadership in the Central Committee. But for a county as expansive and as big as ours, and for a body of people, and I'm talking specifically about Republican people that I've met in the county, whether it's Pahrump only or Beatty, Amargosa, Tonopah, our membership numbers are relatively low. And so something's not running on all cylinders. So we got to take stock of that and figure out how we get that party back cranking on all cylinders and having, a huge amount of members and a huge amount of support for the group. So, I mean, I'm just shooting a little bit of straight honesty, and I'll probably catch a lot of flack for it, but it seems like a few meeting agendas that I've been, present at, when they're played out in the meeting, the agendas seem to be focused on, who can we kick out this month? Whose behavior outside of the meeting is offensive, or who's been telling secrets about what's been going on at the meeting. Here's the thing with me, in any meeting I'd be at, or anytime I'm talking to anyone for the most part, write it down, transcribe it, take an audio recorder, take a video camera, put it on Facebook, Snapchat, whatever you want to do. Whatever I say, I'm not worried that you're going to go say it to somebody else. Or if I have a good idea, I could care less if someone else picks up the ball and runs with it. If I ever suggested anything good on the campaign trail for assembly, and our assemblyman Greg Hafen puts it into practice, great. The whole idea is not for me to be great for doing a great thing. It's for the whole idea is so Nevada can be better off. So if a policy that I suggested or an idea that I had, someone wants to steal that idea and put it into practice, kudos, good. Make this place a better place to live. I don't want to live in a third world crap hole. I don't know if any of you do. I don't. I want this state to be good. I want this county to be good. I want this town to be ran well. This is where my family is. This is where our life is. It has to be good. I want our neighborhoods to be nice. Yeah, absolutely. So I really don't care whose idea it is. Come on, we're like, or at least I am, too old to care about this stuff. Yeah, and secondly, if things are said at a meeting, I could, my idea is don't say anything in front of a bunch of people that you don't mind one or two of them going out over lunch afterwards and spreading around to somebody, whether they're talking to another Republican outside of the meeting and talking about what you said, or they're talking to even a Democrat. Who cares? Like, it's not. I don't think we should be that secretive, especially if we're ever up there talking about good ideas. Let them spread. Let them spread like wildfire. I bet, looking back into history, some of the inventions that we take for granted, that we love, and sometimes we give all this adulation toward the inventor, probably ideas that they kind of modified or stole off someone else, if we're being honest, right? But who cares? The inventions benefit mankind. I'm glad when I flip a switch, the light bulb fires up. That's a good thing. It really doesn't matter whose real ideas are at the foundation of that. It's something that is great that it was invented. So also, it's a slippery slope. If we're having meetings ever and we're calling the membership body to vote somebody out, you're setting up a precedent for, you catch somebody on a bad day, they might say some bad things, and you bring that to the body and say, hey, this person said these horrible things, they cursed, they did this, they called, they made fun of somebody's mother, or whatever they did, should we vote them out, people? And they go ahead and vote, and it's a majority rules thing. I'm not saying it's mob rule, but that's exactly how mob rule happens. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a place where there's mob rule. And for a group of people in that Republican Party that values the terms, constitutional republic, they don't like the word democracy. I'm not a fan of that word either, because we don't want everything to be a democracy where 51% of the people can go steal the money from 49% of the people. We don't want that in real life. So why would we want 51% of the people to be able to just willy-nilly vote somebody out of an organization? I don't like it. And I'm not saying I agree fundamentally with people that have been, disfellowshipped from the organization. Who cares if I disagree with them? Who cares? I think that's a forum where you have people together, and they're going to disagree on certain items. Let's flesh it out. Let's bang it out and let the good ideas and the good proposals come forward. Who cares if someone has a bad idea? I'm going to be chairing this meeting, Grassroots Conservatives of Nevada, and what if I propose some dopey things, some stupid things? I hope I get voted down, right? That's the idea, right? If I have a bad idea and someone can articulate why it's a bad idea, then that stuff's not going to happen, right? So it's like a system that just kind of governs itself, and it takes care of itself if you just let it work out. So that's either way, I hope things improve after this coming election, because like I was saying before, the chair and vice chair are up for election. So, and I'm not slamming the current leadership, but I'll be honest, the way that some of the meetings have gone at times, I've been super irritated. So I hope it gets better, and I'm pretty sure it will be. So now we're going to talk about the women's tea that's scheduled for May 7th. So May 7th, it's a Sunday, 2 p.m. It's set to be at the Artesia Community Center here, in the Artesia community area. So that's where we're going to have that. Not we. I might be there serving with my white gloves and serving some hot water for some tea. But it's the women that are putting it on. It's the women that are the attendees, and it's the women who are the speakers, as well as the entertainment. So it's going to be a good time of enjoying live music, good finger foods, and some talented female leaders and business professionals. And I've said it a few times now, some of the biggest movers and shakers and the people that get things done within the conservative movement in Pahrump have been women. And I think this is a great forum, not only for them to have some hangout time, enjoy some entertainment, have a meal together. But it's going to be a time where local female business owners are going to be promoted. It's a good time for networking for some of these ladies. And it's a good time to just kind of talk about how conservatism and how some of these ideals are actually beneficial to women and a foundation and a bedrock of success. And although there's going to be hopefully women of all parties, whether it's Democrat or independent, American, libertarian, nonpartisan, I'm sure everybody's not going to be agreeing on every topic 100%, but so much of the foundation of conservative, the way being conservative plays out in the real world is so beneficial for women business owners. So those principles of a free, relatively low regulated marketplace, opportunity, a little bit of luck always, right? Fiscal responsibility, hard work. Those are ideals that are essential, and I think it's going to be a good time, and I think it's going to be a great way for folks who might have been disconnected politically ladies that have been disconnected politically to maybe jump in the game and get more involved. Because the way I look at it, if talented people are on the sidelines, if people who are capable decide not to jump in and use their gifts, talents, and abilities, it's such a wasted resource. And this is one minor way to kind of make things better, then I'm 100% for it. So again, you can find tickets through Eventbrite for that event. They're also going to be the link to the Eventbrite is on our site, thenevadapatriot.com. Tickets are $35. So whether you buy a ticket from somebody in person for $35 or you go to the Eventbrite site, all you're going to pay is $35. There's not going to be any extra credit card fees or processing fees. So $35, whether you're paying by credit card or cash. We're trying to make it super easy for women to go ahead and sign up for that. So last thing I'll touch on about the women's conservative tea is that we're still looking for donors/sponsors. So if you're a small business out there, and even if you're not a female-owned small business and you want to provide something for the silent auction at that event, or gift baskets for a couple raffles that'll be done, contact me through the show website at thenevadapatriot.com, or you can text me or call 775-382-2516, 775-382-2516. You'll have acknowledgments throughout the event. Hopefully you'll be on, a color flyers that will be on the tables, as well as a slideshow that's going to show the different companies, their different logos, different, the names and descriptions of the businesses that are helping out. So it might be a good way to get your name out and also do a good thing. So any like-minded conservative business owners out there that want to take part in that, it's going to be something that you can get a little bit of bang for your buck, so to speak, without having to pay hundreds of dollars. We're asking for, gift baskets that are valued somewhere plus or minus, $40 or $50 to get your acknowledgement. Can't beat that in the advertising realm. So keep that in mind. We're going to take a quick break and be back. And once we're back, we're going to focus on some of these bills that we've been doing on prior shows. So we'll highlight some more legislation that is being proposed right now. So stay with us. Matt Sadler here, reminding you tickets are still available for the first ever Conservative Women's Tea, scheduled for May 7th, 2023, 2 p.m. at the Artesia Community Center. There will be finger foods, speeches by local women leaders, a silent auction, raffles, and of course, tea. Enjoy a wonderful afternoon of fellowship, food, and musical entertainment brought to you by our local professionals, Tiffany Whitecloud and DJ Sounds. More information and tickets available at thenevadapatriot.com. Welcome back to the Nevada Patriot podcast. Now for the final stretch of the show. So I'm going to end the show here on a little bit of negative news, but there's good news in that there's still things that you constituents out there, you Nevadans, are able to do to combat some of the bad stuff and borderline evil things being considered at our state lawmaking level. So we're going to focus on the bad ones, the bad bills, the bad proposed laws, because let's face it, as a realist, the good proposed bills, especially proposed by the GOP, are probably dead in the water in DOA. The thing that we can most cling on to and hope the best is that we can offer enough obstruction to the bad legislation, and then we have a governor that has the ability to veto bad legislation to encourage us to do what we can to subvert the agenda from, I hate to say these words, radical left, because basically that's what we're seeing here. When I'm looking at some of these bills, and I'm only going to highlight two of them here to close out our segment, you're talking they're a team effort. Like they're allying together for horrible legislation. What I can consider the second one that we're going to get into, evil legislation, evil laws that we should not, as let alone conservatives or Republicans, that we as just decent human beings, regardless of your party affiliation, regardless of your politics, we should stand against this wholeheartedly. So we're going to start elaborating on a couple of these bills right now. So the first one that I'm going to highlight here, and we could call this, if we're using colorful analogies, we'll call this one or metaphors, we'll call this one the Jeffrey Dahmer bill, and maybe the one after it, the full-on Adolf Hitler bill. So the first bill that I'm going to go over is just one in another litany of proposed laws that is seeking to hyper-regulate, in my opinion, discriminate against a certain industry. And this one involves the midwives, so doulos. It's 92 pages, this proposal, if you look at it through the text of the bill itself. 92 pages. Now, I don't know about you, but I was a pretty good student. Getting through the first 3 pages of A Tale of Two Cities or any book like that in high school literature was difficult for me. So imagine these committee members going through, and eventually the floor people on the floor of the legislature going through 92 pages of this rotten, hyper-regulating, obstructionist bill. So this one is called Assembly Bill 386. Its primary sponsor, it looks like, is Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. It's funny, she hasn't returned emails that I've sent her about other stuff, so go figure. But hey, I'm always open. Your email is not sent and marked for spam, so please, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, feel free to reach out. But anyway, this is Assembly Bill 386. It's an act relating to midwives, establishing the board of licensed certified professional midwives and requiring the board to adopt certain regulations, requiring the Division of Public and Behavioral Health of the Department of Health and Human Services to perform certain tasks relating to the regulation of licensed certified professional midwives. What this bill is doing, I'm not going to read the whole entire synopsis of it because it goes on for a long time. The whole bill should probably be about the size of the synopsis. But in a nutshell, it's just giving extra regulatory regulations, constrictions on midwives, and also it looks like it's having them to have some kind of other additional licensed assistant with them regarding deliveries, if I'm reading it correctly, and maybe some of my family's midwife friends can enlighten me a little bit more on the topic, but I wanted to hurry up and address this before it started proceeding further and further down the legislative process here, so we can kind of get out ahead of it. This AB 386. People solicit and want midwives to help them in the birthing process because they want to not be associated so strictly with regulations, guidelines, hospital procedures, different things. That's the whole reason why they're trying to do that. And there's already some regulations on the books that kind of pertain to midwives as a profession. They're sufficient. They've been sufficient. What I see this bill is a carryover and commandeering over every aspect of our lives that the left seems to be wanting to have. So they're going, it's not enough in the beginning, years and decades ago, like I've droned on before in the past, that the professors and college level teachers would try to go ahead and indoctrinate generations of kids to liberal, progressive, well, I don't like even saying liberal, leftist ideals, because you can be classically liberal and probably find a lot of common ground, because classical liberals revere the Constitution, revere the First Amendment. What we're seeing now is not liberalism as in the classical sense. So what we're seeing is leftism, progressivism, whatever you want to label that. It's not enough for them to try to go after your kids when they're in college. Evidently, it's not enough for them to try to go after your kids in the teenage years or the preteens, like some of these other bills. I believe it's SB 172, which is it circumvents completely the parental authority over decisions having to do with their kids' sexual behaviors, with birth control, with contraceptive devices, different things like that they're bypassing parental consent. These parental consent laws and regulations have been on the books for years. So a 13 or 14-year-old traditionally has not been able to go have some other medical professional give them an intrauterine device or some kind of birth control, different things like that, without the express written consent of their guardian, their parent. Well, SB 172 looks to completely destroy that. Evidently, it's not enough for the left to come after our kids at that level. Now it's an all-out regulatory. They want to control exactly how the child is brought into the world. Now, my children were both brought into the world vis-a-vis obstetricians at hospitals. They ended up being C-sections. All three of my kids, for one reason or another. That's a decision we made as parents, and that's a decision that I wouldn't force upon other people. They have different opinions on it, and I have mine. But the last thing I want to do is restrict someone's choice on how they want to bring their kid into the world. So what I see this bill, AB386, doing is effectively eviscerating the reasons why women would want to bypass the hospital. If they're going to pass the same exact restrictions almost, it's as if they're using this as an underhanded way to force mothers to go ahead and utilize a method of bringing their child into the world that the government wants them to have. The government does not have a say. Well, effectively, it's having a say over all sorts of aspects of our lives, but I think the buck has to stop here with certain intrusions. Now, I've experienced this in my industry. There's a lot more lawyers than bail bondsmen. So our legislators, our lawmakers tend to give credence and value to the vast swaths of lawyers out there that have been lobbying against my industry for decades, right? So we've always been the David versus the Goliath in that situation. Seems like this is making midwives the David in their own David and Goliath story against, whether it's big pharma, the hospital industry, the medical industry, this unholy alliance between the insurance companies, our political leaders, pharmaceutical companies. It just seems like that they're now in that situation, and I think it's wrong. So just out of principle, whether you're a constituent, a voter out here who would never consider using a midwife, would never consider doing anything other than having your child at a hospital with an obstetrician, the way that millions of people have done, it should bother you that they're trying to force this choice on people who don't share that same opinion as you. So, because if they're going after the midwives, they've been going after the bail bondsmen decades ago, they're going after the midwives now. What's the next industry they're going after? Every couple of years, the service tax proposal in Nevada ends up rearing its ugly head. And what that does is, there's always some kind of pressures to tax the service industry. So whether you're a professional photographer, you have some other kind of profession, they want to institute here and there a service tax. And this to me seems like it's a way of, since they can't ever really get that done, at least traditionally in the past sessions, they're trying all these other ways, just like just like they can't outright ban guns, right? But now they're looking to have executive powers come forward. And you're hearing this on the news cycle right now that the ATF, or since they're considering gun violence to be a health crisis, that they can usurp that by having executive powers, kind of like we saw through the COVID pandemic, strike down gun owners' rights using a backdoor, a back channel, because they can't do it outright. Or they're making certain parts of guns or aspects, or whether it's pistol braces, or it was bump stocks years ago. They're using these back channels to go ahead and constrict, restrict, and basically infringe on your Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment is very clear. I implore our listeners, if you don't have a pocket constitution, Google it. Second Amendment, quote unquote, shall not be infringed. Look up the definition of infringed, and then think about shall not. Put the words together, and see how our governing officials are doing the exact opposite of that. So, my opinion, you don't like that amendment, do what you can, leftist progressives, to legally change the Constitution. Good luck on that, because that's what you have to do to continue doing what you're doing to law-abiding, gun-owning, Second Amendment-loving citizens. And I just realized I managed to correlate AB386 regulating midwives to the Second Amendment. So there is a little bit of correlation there. So how the powers that be can try to subvert our liberties. It's all around us. Just want to put that out there. So again, that 92-page bill, that monstrosity, Assembly Bill 386, please reach out if you can through Nellis, or if you have other ways to get a hold of the legislators, the people in that committee, or Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Please voice your opinion, especially if your opinion is that you don't like the bill. Hopefully that dies and it does not go to a floor vote. If it does, I pray that our governor will have the strength to veto that legislation. Republicans in Carson City, please hold the line on any bills like this, because all it takes is one or two of you to go the way of the progressives, and they can shove almost everything on their terrible agenda right down our throat. We cannot have that. Elections, they have consequences. Any milquetoast GOP personnel that managed to squeak through this last election or run opposed in your primaries, you start voting for bills like this in the affirmative and okaying it, you will be primaried. So now that's going to take us to the pinnacle of horrible legislation. I want to make no qualms about this. This is probably the most insidious bill that's being proposed this year, maybe this decade, this century. Terrible. It is SJR7. That stands for Senate Joint Resolution Number 7. Now, when I talked about their team being all on board with certain bills, this bill has so many joint sponsors. I count over 20 of them in the Assembly, 10 or 11 of them in the Senate. When you add those numbers together, that is more than half of the legislators in Carson City put their name as sponsors on this bill. Now, what this bill does, in essence, it allows and will codify in our Nevada Constitution, is the goal for this bill, to have a change in the Constitution that will effectively allow abortion on demand anytime. That would be up to 9 months, whenever, at whatever stage, for whatever reason. They're putting it under, of course, the guise of reproductive health. All these sugar-coated terms, when in reality what they're talking about is sanctioned government, constitutional sanctioned Holocaust is what I see it as, of perpetuating mass extinction and murder of innocent babies, the most marginalized, the most underrepresented victim class there can be. And the left loves victim classes, right? Everybody wants to be a victim. That's the virtue signal of the day, of the year, is who can be the biggest victim. Well, there is no bigger victims than the unborn enduring and going through abortion procedures. So This Senate joint resolution proposes to amend our Nevada Constitution to establish certain rights coming out of this bill. So, Article 1 of the Nevada Constitution sets forth certain inalienable rights of an individual. This resolution proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution by adding a new section to Article 1, which will guarantee each individual in this state a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, unless your freedoms are the freedoms of the individual inside of the womb, who will never get a chance to exercise their reproductive freedom, as we journey down this conundrum of illogical fallacy that the left constantly just wants to ignore. Even if it wasn't morally reprobate, morally bankrupt, to do that, to sanction mass murder up to 9 months of children, even logically, the science is not on that side. Scientists do not agree that that child, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months in the womb before they're born into the world, are not human. No scientist will argue that they're inhuman. If you're pointing at something in someone's womb, a fetus, and you can ask a scientist, is that fetus alive or is it not alive? They will say, well, it's definitely not dead. Well, that would mean that the fetus is alive. And then what's alive in the womb? That is is that a puppy in the womb? Is that a plant? Is that a human being? Well, it's a human. A scientist would agree, right? And they say the word fetus just means tiny human, tiny baby, is all that really means, right? So you can say fetus, synonymous in my book with child, baby. Yeah, it's don't let them doctor it up with the language, right? With the medical terminology, they try to equate fetus as in something, means something less than human. That's not the meaning of the word. The meaning of the word fetus is not anything less than human. It just means little human, little baby. Reproductive health, yeah, that's another term they like to use for basically just abortion on demand. Evidently, is the benchmark of reproductive health, right? So if this resolution passes somehow, and then it goes to the vote of the people, a majority vote of the people on 2 successive election cycles, 2 successive general election cycles, I believe, is the criteria, and this can change our U.S. Constitution. It will be the bill that will ultimately enshrine this great state that I've lived in my entire life, that I was born into, a state that outside of a couple urban areas would be the epitome of a free state, a liberty-loving state. It would make this state basically be a Sodom or Gomorrah. And that's not even hyperbole. That's what it would be. And it would make me feel shame about living and being born and raised in this state. So please, legislators out there, for the sake of humanity and for the sake of all these unborn children, that you would undoubtedly, by stroking your pen in favor of this, or voting in favor of this, or signing this into law, Governor Lombardo, I don't say it lightly, but blood will be on these people's hands. And I believe as a Christian that there's judgment for that, and we're storing it. We're storing wrath and judgment. Just because it's stayed or delayed doesn't mean that the God of the universe isn't understanding and keeping track of exactly what we're doing and what we're not doing to stand in the gap to defend that. And I'm calling out to you, a lot of you Republican leaders out there. Have some fortitude. Stand in the gap. Our state resolution as Republicans, it is pro-life. Our Nye County resolution is that the party is pro-life. So let's start acting like it. Let's start standing in that gap and not be afraid to irritate or to agitate or to offend someone. I mean, we all have someone that we know and love that have probably undergone a procedure, an abortion procedure. And we've all sinned. We've all done things wrong, whether it's a litany of sins. And I'm not singling out this as the chief sin of which, there's no forgiveness of. Through Jesus Christ, all sins are forgiven if you believe and you repent. So there's no way to out-sin God's grace. And certain sins aren't higher priority or worse off than some other sins. But when we willfully and almost with a smile on our face as a culture look at this as something to celebrate, that's different, right? You see T-shirts now out there, abortion rocks or just different things like that. It's absolutely repugnant and disgusting, and something that you wouldn't imagine. You'd imagine this in some barbaric society, some primitive society, some animalistic society that would revel in that would be proud of that type of behavior. But we're seeing it in the culture, and it's time that our leaders get off their butts and take a stand for decency. Well, that's going to do it for our time here at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. I'm glad that you stood by, listened to my rantings, and on a lighter note, hopefully folks will get involved with the Easter activities, different things coming down. I know on April 8th, we'll be at Petrack Park. The Pahrump Holiday Task Force is going to be putting on a great free event with food, prizes, eggs, games, different things like that, train ride from PDOP. It's going to be a good time, so make sure you check that out. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. the Saturday right before Easter. I forgot to mention that earlier in the announcement part, so I want to make sure I put that across now. So, and just keep in mind that any podcast, any of our recordings are archived. They're available on demand on our website, thenevadapatriot.com, or you can check out Rumble. And if my podcasts are still allowed to be on YouTube for much longer, you can always check them out on YouTube. But you never know when you're going to get flagged or striked or kicked off that platform. So you can always find us on Rumble. You can always find us on our website. So until the next time, Nevada Patriots, God bless you.
Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.